at make it 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. Welcome to this evening's Planning Committee, 20th of June 2023. Welcome to those that are watching from online on the internet, and welcome to officers and, most importantly, members of the Planning Committee. Item 1 this evening, do we have any apologies? I have apologies from Councillor Moffat, and I believe she's been substituted by Councillor Diamond. Good evening, Councillor Diamond. Do we have any other apologies? Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest tonight in the agenda from members here present tonight? I see that's a no. Moving on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Now, I realise it was quite a long meeting last time, but are we all agreed in terms of the accuracy of that meeting's report? Thank you. I see that by essential heads. Okay, that brings us to the first substantive item of the evening's proceedings, item 4, which is application for major development, the shopping mall, York Place, Newcastle-under-Lyme. Who's introducing this one? Is it you? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal relates to the York Place shopping centre, which is at the junction of High Street, Merrill Street and Church Street. So this is the building here edged in red. I'm sure all members are aware of the current York Place. Full planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing shopping centre and the construction of 2, 3 and 4-storey buildings. Retail and food and beverage units are proposed on the ground floor with offices on the upper floors. The application site lies within the town centre conservation area and close to a number of listed buildings, including the Grade 2 listed Old Bull's Head pub, which is just there where my cursor is, to the southeast of the site, and St Giles's Church, which is a Grade 2 star listed building. The current shopping arcade has very high vacancy rates. Some pictures here of the existing site. It's currently a rather incongruous building within the street scene and is specifically mentioned within the conservation area character appraisal as being a key negative. The new proposals comprise 2 blocks, Block A, which is this one here, and Block B. Block A is to be a maximum of 4 stories in height, and Block B is to be 3 stories. The tallest massing would be along Merrill Street, which is here to the top of the screen, in particular at the corner here with High Street. A public square is proposed to the rear of Block A, just there. The proposed palette of materials includes standing seam metal for the roofs, red bricks for the facades, green glazed bricks for the shop front, which are shown here, and linear format white bricks and blocks, which are shown there, are the larger format blocks, and these are the linear bricks for the feature gable corner of the scheme. So showing you some elevations. So this is the elevation along Merrill Street. This is Block A at the moment. So as I said, the larger of the 2. So these are the white bricks that you saw referenced there in the schedule of materials. And then round the corner, this is the other part of Block A, which fronts onto High Street. This is the Merrill Street frontage here of the other building, the Block B building, and this here is the elevation to the to the side. I'll just go back to show you on the just bear with me a second. So the elevations I was just showing you there was that elevation with Merial Street, and then this elevation here fronting the public square. So I've got some images here to show you how the building will look within the street scene. So this is looking up Church Street. Here's St Giles's Church on the left, and these are the 4-storey gables in the white bricks that we referenced previously. Same part of the building of Block A, but looking along High Street. So this is to the what I'll refer to as the rear of the site. So this is the public square here, and this is the pub, the Old Bull's Head. This is Merial Street. So this shows the massing of the 3-storey building. So you can see there that 3-storey projecting up to 4-storey at that point. And the reason for that is to respect the lower massing of the existing buildings on Merial Street. So that's a view from Lad Lane towards Block B. So this is the public square area. Sorry, I've gone on too far. So the Conservation Officer fully supports the scheme, the scale and massing, materials, and the creation of the square and the opening up of the space, particularly around the pub. The massing of the buildings is considered appropriate in the context of existing development, and in particular, it wouldn't harm the setting of the adjacent listed building, the Old Bull's Head. No car parking is proposed within the site, and servicing of the units would be undertaken through either Merial Street or Iron Market. But given the highly sustainable location of the site, close to to bus provision and a number of car parks, and the fact that there's no parking for the current development, it is considered suitable to provide no dedicated parking as part of this scheme. Disabled parking and taxi bays are available on Merial Street along the site's northern boundary. So the redevelopment of this prominent town centre site with high quality buildings would be a significant improvement on the existing York Place and would enhance the site, street scene and conservation area. Subject to appropriate conditions and a Section 106 agreement to ensure sustainable transport objectives, it is not considered that an objection could be sustained. Thank you.
Rachel, I'm not aware of anybody wishing to speak against the proposal. At this point, I'll open it up to members. Councillor Holland, followed by Councillor Fear.
Perhaps stating the obvious, but it's certainly an improvement on the current York Place. There's clearly a great deal of thought gone into it. I'm very encouraged that the Conservation Officer is warm towards the proposal, and the police response, the crime prevention design officer, was positively effusive. I am minded to be supportive of what's proposed. Obviously, we are a planning committee looking at this scheme on its planning merits, but it's obviously something that we've been made aware of in its context as a key town centre regeneration project as well. So I'd move the recommendations as printed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to second Councillor Holland's moving of the recommendation. When we look at this, I think what stood out for me in the presentation we just had from our officer is this reference to what we have at the moment as a key negative in the conservation area in the centre of the town. And I think, sadly, one has to say that that's the case, isn't it? This is a product of that worst of all decades from the 20th century, the 1960s, and it is a rather decaying, ugly box. It doesn't fit in when one looks, and this year in particular with 850, I've been looking at old photographs of Newcastle and such like, but really it doesn't fit in with the street scene either way, and in particular the core street scene running along High Street, Liverpool Road in that direction. And when one looks at older photographs, I think what's proposed here will in fact come much closer to fitting in with what we've had in the past, and indeed what we have on either side, down Liverpool Road side in particular. So if you were walking up from the Ring Road that way, I think this would work. I came up from Lower Street this evening from St Giles Church. At first, I was a little bit sceptical of the colour proposed for the corner, but actually I've warmed to it walking up there, trying to imagine that or a darker colour in my mind's eye. I think the white actually works quite well in that regard. Also, I think, as Councillor Holland said, one of the things we've got to do when we think about designing our town centre is to design out problems of antisocial behaviour and such like. And I'm very pleased at the proposal here that Lad Lane will be widened, for example. We'll get a nice view through this thing. So I think potentially here we've got an area which will be good for shopping, but also be good for what's usually called a nighttime economy, and it will be a safe and pleasant place to be. Therefore, I think, you know, this has very many merits. It will replace something with, frankly, no merits at all, and that's why I would urge members to vote in favour of these recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think members, well, don't remember that the cenotaph, before the cenotaph was put in Red Line Square, it was a completely different area than what it is today. I must say, and I've congratulated the County Council on the work they did around the cenotaph. So this building will enhance that square, and it's very pleasant to sit there and go through in the sunshine, hopefully. And you know what Councillor Fears said, as we go up the extended alleyway, or what do you call it, and then you hit the corner of the Bull's Head and the new development, just to make sure whether there's a gate going to go on there because of the antisocial behaviour that occurs behind the Bull's Head. Now, we don't have deliveries to the Bull's Head at the front or the back, but these are backyards to, or back entrance to properties on the Iron Market, and that is a problem area for antisocial behaviour. So you've got it down as Fox Street South, which links in to the area I'm talking about. So can the officer go through the plans on that particular area? Appreciate that, please, and make sure that is there a gateway or a whatever going to go up between the Bull's Head and new development. Thank you.
Officer, like to reply to that?
Just to confirm that, yes, there is a gate proposed in that location.
It's to the proposed development will go from the Iron Market and Merrill Street. So really behind there is Fox Street South. What the development, what opinion will the development of that blocked off alleyway? That's the point I'm making.
So servicing can take place behind there at the moment, can't it? So you mean that area at the back?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, all servicing is proposed to be from off Merrill Street and High Street, as it is for other town centre shops and businesses. So there will still be an area there, but yeah, you won't be able to walk all the way through. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think some members would have had the chance last year to look at sort of preliminary drawings and sketches. I thought at the time it looked good, and I see no reason to change my mind. I'm sure that what is proposed will be a major advance on the existing structures. One thing I do like about the design, as outlined by the officer this evening, is there are no recessed doorways, because I know that they can be a problem. But somebody said about the police being effusive. Well, my reading of the report is I think they were supportive, but they did raise comments about street furniture and the layout of that square. And I suppose what I'm looking for is an assurance that the plans that we have in front of us actually do take note and do take account of that. Because as several members have said, what we want is a public space that the public will enjoy and use, and not really become a sort of magnet for some of the antisocial behaviour that we do see around the town. So it's just, I suppose my main question really is the extent to which that the design and plans we have before us take account of the need to design a square, you know, that counters antisocial behaviour.
Very much forms part of their design and access statement, consideration of security measures. And the police are generally very supportive, but yes, they do have, they do make some points, and they do make a number of security recommendations, which is the standard really response that we get from the police. They would always make a number of security recommendations, and you'll see one of the conditions, condition 17 of the recommendation proposes a condition that requires details of the provision of security measures. So we're seeking submission of those details for us to consider.
There's just one very quick thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. It's Councillor Williams raising the question of the cenotaph. Now, I've already raised this at the Cabinet, but it might be nice to attach a note from this committee as well. When we have the demolition of these structures, hopefully it will be rapid, but it would be nice to ask the developer if it was happening on Remembrance Sunday, that the hoardings could have something appropriate perhaps placed on them for that very important event for many members in the borough. And we'd certainly, I think, want to make sure that the solemnity of that ceremony was preserved at that point. So perhaps just attaching, as I say, I've raised this in another forum, but I think it would be nice for this committee just to attach a little note asking the developer to enhance that ceremony if they're still working on the site at that time.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fear. Our officers have made a note for that great suggestion. I think that would be welcomed by everybody in Newcastle. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a proposal from Councillor Holland and seconded by Councillor Fear. Can I have a show of hands in support of that, please? And that's unanimously passed. Thank you very much. At this point, members, I'd like to draw your attention that there is if you have had a chance to see the first and secondary supplementary reports that have been published since the agenda items were originally published, just to make sure that you're aware of those. And if you're not aware of those, then please indicate now, and we'll allow time for you to digest that. Okay, moving on to item 5. This application for major development land us to the south of Liverpool Road, Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Thank you, Chair. Full planning permission is sought for the erection of a multi-storey car park with associated access, servicing and landscape works. So I'm showing on the screen here the location of the site. No doubt that all members know where the site is, but just in case, that's Rycroft across to the north, the roundabout at the top of Nutton Lane, and to the south here we've got the core of the town centre. So this site is part of a wider master plan aspiration for Rycroft. So that this master plan isn't part of the application, but I'm just showing you this for information really. So here's the wider Rycroft site. members have probably, I'm pretty sure, seen this before, but this is the site that we're looking at now. And these are the buildings that are potentially proposed in the future on the wider site. So possibly a hotel here, and then Aspire offices and accommodation for the over 55s. But as I say, that doesn't form part of the application. It's just to give you some context. The proposal comprises a 5-storey car park, providing 471 parking spaces, 22 accessible spaces, all of which will have electric vehicle charging points, 39 standard EV charging bays, and 18 motorcycle spaces. The car park has been designed as what's referred to as a vertical circulation module, VCM, which is a continuous, gently sloping ramped car park that is set at a slight gradient, allowing easy pedestrian movement around the car park at all levels. So the main circulation core is located on the southeast corner of the building here. So you'll see when I show you the elevations, there's two, what I refer to as, I suppose, towers. So there's this one, as I say, and this to the southeast corner, which is the main one, and another one to the corner with Rycroft and Liverpool Road. But this one here is purely for as an escape route. So these are the elevations. They comprise a series of profiled and perforated aluminium panels with solid panels to create the appearance of projecting fins following the line of the sloping floor slabs, which have been designed, as I referred to previously, to continuously and gently rise up to the top of the car park. The orientation of the aluminium panels is altered at each floor level to create a series of sloping horizontal bands that wrap around the elevations. The other materials other than the aluminium panels are a natural facing red brickwork plinth, which you can see around the bottom of the building. And then the two cores would comprise painted precast concrete coloured in a complementary tone. So while the nature of the development is functional, obviously to provide car parking, it's considered that it would be a building of high quality. And although significant in scale and massing, it's considered that it would sit comfortably on the proposed site. So they're the other elevations, and these are quite helpful in showing you images of what the building will look like. So that is to the south of the site. And this is the main core that we spoke about, where that will have access to all floors. That's looking at it from further over to, I can't remember the name of the street now. Sorry, just bear with me. Corporation Street, that was it. That's looking along at the junction of Liverpool Road here with Corporation Street. So this is the main, well, the only vehicular access and egress from the building. That's again from Corporation Street. So this here is Liverpool Road. So that's on Liverpool Road, looking directly at that long elevation. That's from the corner of Rycroft and Liverpool Road. Another one back from the junction of Corporation Street and Liverpool Road. And this is the a landscaping plan just to show you the landscaping, particularly along these two elevations here. So those landscape proposals have been submitted, which will eventually link to the landscaping proposals for the wider master plan project. The landscaping will help to soften the car park elevations and provide substantial betterment to the site, particularly fronting onto Liverpool Road and Corporation Street. A transport assessment has confirmed that the proposed redevelopment proposals would not result in any severe impact on the local highway network in terms of safety and or capacity, and the Highway Authority has raised no objections subject to conditions. The Environmental Health Division has no objections subject to the imposition of conditions, and therefore it's considered that the proposed development would be acceptable in terms of air quality and noise impact. So overall, the development would regenerate a previously developed site, providing parking spaces and in turn generating visitors and footfall, and thereby contributing to the vitality and viability of the town centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I believe there is one speaker on this item who is in support of the scheme, who's going to be joining us hopefully online. Mr. Lee Fulcher, are you there? Mr. Fulcher, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, that's a Mr. Fulcher.
Yes, it is. Hi, Jeff.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Before I allow you to speak, just to remind you, you have 5 minutes to speak on this item, and changed from the normal 3 minutes that we usually have at Planning Committee by the constitutional change voted through by full council. So you have 5 minutes should you wish to use. Towards the end of the 5 minutes, about 4 minute mark, our officers will remind you that you have a minute to conclude your speech. If you'd like to introduce yourself and begin now, please.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Lee Fulcher from DPP Planning, and we're speaking on behalf of the applicant today, who is Morgan Sindall Construction and Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. So just in terms of a background, in 2021, the council received confirmation that its plans for the government's Future High Street Fund and Town Deal funding received approval, providing them with £34 million towards renewing and regenerating the town. And a new multi-storey car park was underlined as part of that redevelopment of the Rycroft site. So it's considered that the delivery of the multi-storey car park on the brownfield site within this town centre location will obviously support and strengthen the chances of revitalising the town centre. There's also been discussions regarding the closure of car parks around the town, with the council receiving funding for the replacement of the Midway multi-storey car park, which at the minute is at the end of its economic life, and that will be replaced by the proposed development. So the new multi-storey car park will not only accommodate the parking need for the forthcoming Rycroft master plan, which Rachel touched on, but it will also replace the 709 parking spaces lost at the Midway car park. Ultimately, the proposal forms part of Newcastle-under-Lyme's long-term plan to rejuvenate the town centre, and in the future it will become part of the mixed-use development on this site, so which is planned potentially to encompass a hotel, assisted living accommodation and offices. And this is the first plot of that to be brought forward of the ongoing master plan of the Rycroft area, which, like I say, is still being developed and will be progressed separately. It's argued that the multi-storey car park would directly support the wider regeneration initiatives by providing the car parking needed for the mixed-use developments in this area, and then would also generate visitors and footfall, contributing to the vitality and viability of the town centre. In terms of comments received on the application to date, we as an applicant team have engaged extensively with the LPA and statutory consultees, as well as Midlands Design Review Panel prior to the submission of the application, and then throughout the determination of it as well, addressing consultative feedback just to ensure that the proposals are appropriate for the area. And that's obviously resulted in the officer's recommendation for approval. Just briefly touching on benefits of the scheme. Like I say, the proposal will regenerate a previously developed, largely vacant site in this prominent location within the town centre, and it will provide approximately 471 parking spaces, which, like I say, will in turn generate visitors footfall and encourage increased spending in and around the town centre. It'll be the first step in regeneration of the Rycroft area, which is to be envisaged through the forthcoming master plan. This will act as a catalyst for that regeneration. It'll also result in temporary direct and indirect jobs associated with the construction of the multi-storey car park, which obviously will benefit the local economy. And then for those driving into the town centre, it will provide parking spaces in a well-located part of the centre. As Rachel touched on, the delivery of the scheme will also enhance the street scene along Liverpool Road in particular, in this vacant site, which is what it is presently. And it's of low ecological value at the minute, and attention has been given to try and enhance that along that Liverpool Road planting with shrubs, trees and other vegetation, which ultimately has achieved a biodiversity net gain as well. And other than that, you've got the provision of the obsolete Midway multi-storey car park, which will redirect vehicle traffic outside the town centre core to a fit-for-purpose multi-storey car park. The new facility will integrate low carbon technology to mitigate the climate change challenges being experienced and prepared for anticipated trends in urban mobility as well. And that includes electric car charging points. So in summary, it's considered that the proposed development will result in substantial public benefits. And as outlined in the submission documents, the proposals are compliant with relevant policies in the local plan and the NPPF, and obviously have a recommendation for approval from the officer. So just respectfully ask members if you could please vote in favour of the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission for this first phase of the master plan. Thank you.
Fulcher, for your contribution. I'll now open up the item to members. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. As I was looking through the plans, I struggled a bit with trying to understand how traffic flows within the car park, and I think you just had an image up, and I'm struggling to fully understand from the plans. I wonder if an officer can talk me through how vehicles enter, move around the car park and come back down, because from what I could see in that plan, the last image I saw, the entry point has 2 lanes for vehicles coming in, 1 lane for vehicles coming out, and I couldn't quite follow the flow of arrows how a vehicle that's on the top floor would go all the way down and then exit out on that 1 lane, exiting out. So if an officer could talk me through that, if possible.
I must admit, I've not studied that in a huge amount of detail because I was relying on the comments of the Highway Authority, which are quite detailed in their acceptance of that. But I can see if I can get a plan. Yeah, please.
Any other members wishing to speak why our officer looks that up? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question really about the number of accessible bays. Just see if I've got this right. We've got 471 spaces in total and 22 accessible bays, which I work out about what, 4 or 5%. That seems really quite low to me. Are we in line with sort of national guidelines? Can an officer explain how that figure was sort of calculated? Because it does seem quite low given the size of the car park.
Standards, we don't have a policy that sets out standards for that, but I am assuming that they comply with the relevant standards. I was just going to have a look in the transport assessment to see what it says in there. Just bear with me. Find reference within the transport assessment to that. It may be in another document somewhere, but importantly, the Highway Authority have been consulted, and they requested additional information, not on that matter, but on various other things, and that information was submitted, and they've raised no objections to the scheme subject to conditions. So I would have to assume that as the experts on parking and access, that they are complying with the standards, and that because that satisfied the Highway Authority.
Are you content with that? Are any other members wishing to speak on this? Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the presentation. Again, it's nice to see bicycles appear in this mock-up, albeit they all seem to be very retro bicycles, it has to be said, but there you are. When I look at this, and in particular, I'm looking at the key considerations that we're asked to consider here, and it seems to me that this development pretty much fits those. I hear what Councillor Gorton says, but 5%, I mean, presentation is everything, isn't it, in these things? I mean, another way of putting that is that 1 in 20 of these things has access to it. And I'm not sure that 1 in 20 users of this, or more than 1 in 20 users of this, will necessarily need accessible access. So, and they won't all be there at the same time. So I think we're covered there, and I think we're also covered probably with the EV charging, which is something I'm less excited about. But as regards the rest of it, is this acceptable here? Well, if we look at what's been there in the past, I think the answer must clearly be yes. Again, those of us who can remember the old Sainsbury's building, I think this building, car parks are never going to be handsome buildings in one sense, but I think it's a planning gain on the very bland brick structure that was there before. So again, highways have talked about access to the thing, and they're happy with that. So I think actually the planning terms that we set out here, this is entirely acceptable. It's of course for us to show it's not acceptable. I don't think we can do that. I don't want to do that. Actually, I'm glad it's acceptable. So I'd like to move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it looks reasonable as a car park, but it's a shame that we haven't got views from down the old Liverpool Road and from the A34. All we've been shown is very close-ups of the proposed car park. Also, we don't know the internal workings, and people say, "Oh, the internal workings is a car park," but it's a cleansing of the car park. Will our sweepers be able to go in and clean it? That was one of the failures of the Midway car park, which the machines couldn't get in and clean the corners. And over the years, it deteriorated and it got really filthy. Also, security, the antisocial behaviour in that corner of the town with the courts being there, it's well known, it's well documented by the police and by residents living down there as people coming to the courts and coming out of the court, causing problems down there. And I'll just say antisocial behaviour. I won't go any more detailed than that. We haven't seen any security. Is there going to be a full-time operative there? What cameras are going to go there to deter people from antisocial behaviour? The safety of the users of the car park, you know, especially at night time. Will there be 24-hour surveillance or cameras? We haven't seen any of that, Mr. Chairman. And lastly, I just make the point, it's on page 24, on the fourth paragraph down, it's a design review panel, which I agree with what they've said. And what they're saying is they haven't seen the wider master plan for the Rycroft. It's quite an extensive piece of land with proposed hotel and Spire headquarters and housing on there. We haven't seen any of that. That links in to a design, a master plan for that area. And I suppose on the fifth paragraph down, the answer is there, that we can't because the money's got to be spent by a certain date. And really it's putting pressure on this committee and representing the people of the borough that we don't know the internal workings of the car park and where it'll fit in with the master plan for that Rycroft area. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. I am aware that the planning team will correct me if I'm wrong. I've looked into legalities of this, and we're talking for a like-to-like replacement building in terms of a car park, and the actual linking into the master plan isn't required. But I will ask officers to check that to make sure that that is true. I understand where you're coming from, but that's the way that the position is, as I understand it. I'll leave myself open to be corrected if that's not the case.
Thank you. First of all, the lack of an outline or an application for the wider master plan, it's something that officers raised at the beginning of the scheme, and it would be preferable to see how it links into the wider site. But for the reasons set out in the report, that wasn't possible. And we have looked at the application that we have before us, and we're satisfied, and all the consultees, importantly, are satisfied that they have been able to address or assess the application on its own merits, and that it's not, whilst it would be preferable, it's not necessary to have the wider site considered at the same time. In terms of the security and antisocial behaviour issues, initially the police had concerns and advised that there were a number of aspects of the scheme which had the potential to undermine security and safety. So they sought additional information that was provided. We consulted with the police, and you'll see in the report, it states that they feel that provided very helpful clarification about what is proposed, including how the car park will operate in general terms, and indicates the incorporation of significant security and safety measures in response to previous perceived shortcomings. They say it's accepted that the design should provide a good level of safety and security to the perimeter of the building while maintaining an approachable proposal. And they make, as I referred to in the previous application, they make a number of recommendations regarding security. And again, within the list of conditions in the recommendation, we are, yeah. If I can just finish the sentence on that, yeah, condition 7 within the recommendation in the main agenda report requires the submission of a scheme to deter antisocial behaviour. So we are seeking the submission of that, and then we would take a view on whether we consider that to be acceptable or not.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, will it come back to us for this committee, or will we be looking at the security around this car park?
No,
Car park?
it wouldn't come back to the committee. Information to satisfy conditions doesn't ordinarily come back to the committee. If we felt it was necessary when we receive those details, and I think we probably would, we would consult with the police again, as we have done on the application itself. So we would be reliant on their expertise in that field.
You know, Mr. Chairman, it's got to be safety, isn't it, of the people using that car park?
I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Williams, but I think in this case, we leave that to the officers to conduct that with the police, which I'm sure will be in their best interest to make this a safe site, because they'll be the first people that we are going to call upon if it's not. So I'm reasonably confident that the officers have got that in hand. At this point, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. With the greatest of respect to Councillor Williams, who raised a concern. Okay. I appreciate, Councillor Williams, that you might find it difficult to hear, but you did hear that I was addressing you with the greatest of respect. So with the greatest of respect, you can hear what I'm saying. Brilliant. Okay. Right. I should learn to project. Okay, Councillor Williams repeated my own words back to me when he was telling me he couldn't hear me. I am not taking that from Councillor Williams.
Gentlemen, can we just ensure a little bit of calm, please, and carry on? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. With your leave, I will address the committee and say what I was going to say before I was interrupted.
Can you find your comments to what you want to say?
Oh, you know, I'd love to, Chair. Right. Number one, Councillor Williams began by telling us that we hadn't seen a link with the master plan. Our officers, the first thing they showed us, the first slide that our officers showed us was a slide relating this potential development to the master plan, which doesn't connect directly with this application, which doesn't form part of the application that's in front of us. I trust that members are satisfied that they have seen enough to enable them to determine the application. Councillor Gorton asked a question about the proportion of disabled bays. The British Standards Institute in 2009 published British Standard BS 8300. That standard suggests that 5% should be the figure, and 5% is indeed the figure in front of us tonight. I'm also very pleased that the design of this building includes from the start a number of electric vehicle charging bays. That's something that's extremely important, is provided as part of this development. I don't know if our officers have made any progress on being able to locate drawings or schematics that will help us to understand the circulation of vehicles within the car park. But I note that the report includes reference to the vertical circulation module. I have the benefit of a tablet in front of me. I've been able to draw up photographs and diagrams of the way in which cars or vehicles move around a car park. Under that model, it seems fairly sensible to me. It may actually be possible from some of the mock-ups that our officers showed us of the long edge section of this proposed development to see part of that. I'm not an engineer, but my understanding of the way in which the circulation is supposed to work is that rather than having a turret or one end of the development dedicated to rising and falling vehicles, so tight corners, constant turning, going up or down in a sort of corkscrew motion, the vertical circulation module is a gentle slope from one end of the building to the other. So cars travel further in order to get up to the top and down to the bottom again, but it's a lot safer. I don't know if members remember being in a car park where you can see scrapes on the walls from where vehicles have had to make tight turns, and it's very difficult for them to do so. This seems to me to be the better way of designing car parks. It seems to me to be the industry standard, and it seems to me as though that's what's proposed. So on the top drawing that we can see now on our screens, you can see a gentle gradient It's a sort of Z shape there. That looks to me like what I've just described. So rather than all of that movement, all of that circulation happening at one end, it's across several floors, and you go down gently, and then you turn around and you go down to the next floor, and upwards, obviously, if you're heading into the car park. That seems to me to be enough to answer the question. Perhaps if our officers have anything further in terms of security measures, so where cameras and the like would go, that might satisfy the members. I am satisfied with the design of the thing. My only question, if I may put one, would be: will the finishing of this weather well? We've heard a lot about fins and metal, and I'm just wanting to be reassured that this isn't going to rot away on the edge of our town centre, and that the finish will either stay as it is presented to us, so it's going to look like that in 10 or 20 years' time, or will weather to something equally acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. I believe officers want to come back on that.
Yes, thank you for that helpful explanation of how the car park operates. The only other thing that I was just wishing to share was because Councillor Jones referred specifically to how it works at the entrance, and just looking at the documents. So access and egress will be directly off Liverpool Road through a vehicle portal in the western facade. It is intended that parking will be controlled by an ANPR system, which is automatic number plate recognition, thereby minimising any delay upon entry and negating vehicle queuing on Liverpool Road. There will be 3 lanes available within the entrance and exit, with the centre line being able to monitor vehicles in either direction. So the car park can operate as 2 lanes in, 1 lane out, or 1 lane in, 2 lanes out, to cater for the flows during particularly busy periods. So but under general day-to-day operation, the car park would operate under 2 lanes in and 1 lane out. So I hope that helps on that query about the entrance.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And I did find the plan that I was struggling to understand with my electric device, and it's on the ground floor plans. That does help understand a little bit about how the 3 lanes work. I do still have some concerns when I was looking at the ground plans. It is quite, and I appreciate the explanation from apprentice engineer Councillor Holland, who really has helped me understand how that movement of traffic works within the car park. My concern is that it is quite a tight, as vehicles are entering or exit at the same point. They come in, it's quite a tight turn, and you're immediately fronted by disabled bays that extend out into the central part that the vehicles move up and down. And it feels like quite a tight bottleneck. And on those plans, there's 2 grey shaded areas that I assume are to direct traffic so it doesn't go into the walls. Well, that creates quite a narrow bottleneck there. My concern is if there is quite a lot of vehicles entering or exiting at the same time, that's going to create issues for those vehicles. And it doesn't seem clear to me that that is a smart way of handling movement of vehicles in and out of the actual car park itself, which I do feel is going to be something that under those plans will be dealing with concerns from users of the car park for the life of the building. I will say some positives I noted from it. I really do applaud the number of EV chargers. I think that is critical infrastructure given the volume of switch over to chargeable vehicles. I think that's good. And I also note within the associated plans around the site, the addition of trees. I always think it's good when we when we see a development such as this, where there are the addition of trees to the local area and bringing obviously more trees within the town centre is a good thing. But I do very much have concerns about how the site will be used at those peak times. And what we don't want is a situation people will, I would say, vote with their feet, but vote with their car, that if it's difficult to get in and out of that car park at peak times, they just won't park there and find alternative parking. And that would be a concern. But I'm happy if officers want to allay that concern in some ways.
Jones?
Again, there's been various ongoing discussions with the Highway Authority on this scheme. They requested additional information that was received, and they refer in their most recent consultation response to they've reviewed the additional information submitted, and they confirm that sufficient information has been provided to address their previous comments, and they have no objection subject to conditions. And in relation to the access and the internal layout, they're recommending that the access must operate under that automatic number plate recognition and barrierless system for the lifetime of the development. So presumably that reduces the concern, the issue that you're concerned about. And yeah, the parking spaces and circulation routes shall be laid out in accordance with the approved plans and retained for the lifetime of the development. So again, they have assessed it, and as the experts who are advising us, they are satisfied that will work. So we have no reason to raise concerns in that regard.
For that, I don't see other further hands. Councillor Hutchinson.
If I could ask just one very quick question, that's okay. Like Councillor Jones, I'm really happy to see the 45 charging bays in the car park. If the developer decides to make the car park a green car park with solar panels on the roof to generate the electricity to power the charging in the 45 bays, would that have to come back to the planning committee for approval, or is that something that could be done without extra planning permission? Thank you.
Rachel.
So you're asking whether they need permission for the solar panels? Well, potentially, yes, they would need permission for that. But yeah, I don't think it's anything that we would have any particular concerns about.
Okay, thank you. I was just thinking of the green angle.
Thank you for that, Councillor. So we have a formal proposal from Councillor Fear in support of this application. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Hollins. Do we have anybody against the proposal? No. Okay, so a show of hands, please, for in support of this application, please. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. In that case, the application is approved. Thank you. Brings us to the next line of business, which is land southwest of Chatterley Valley, item 6 on your agenda, Peacock Hay Road talk. Is it you? I believe, Nick, you're presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the approval of reserved matters relating to access arrangements, layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of plot D1 for a proposed industrial or other commercial building following outline planning permission as part of the hybrid planning permission for the wider Chatterley Valley development site. The site has a long-standing employment allocation and has previously been subject to various planning permissions for its redevelopment. As discussed, this application is for plot D1. The site here is shown as the application site in red, obviously adjacent to the A500 highway, and then you've got Peacock Hay Road to the north. To the east is the existing logistics development, the JCB, former Blue Planet. The image on the screen shows the site layout of plot D1. Accesses via a main arterial central highway that will run through the site and serve all of the plots as part of this part of the development. You've got one large industrial commercial building with loading bays to primarily to the front. You've got employee car parking to the side. The image on the screen shows an aerial image of the site in question. The Chatterley Valley site is here with Peacock Hay Road running down to, amongst other things, Lowfield Drive and Bathpool Park, one of the accesses to Bathpool Park. The image on the screen shows the elevational treatments. The image now on the screen shows the a CGI of what the proposed building will look like when it's completed. A supplementary report was published earlier today with a revised recommendation. If I may, I'll just, because of the late publication of that, I'll just read out the officer's comments. As set out in the main agenda report at paragraphs 5.3 and 5.4, and this is in response to the lead local flood authority's comments. Condition B5 of the hybrid planning permission sought detailed surface water drainage detail to be submitted for approval. Condition B5 has not been satisfied as yet, but it is a separate process to this reserved matters application. Condition B12 of the hybrid consent did require means of surface water drainage to be included in the reserved matters submission, and that information has been provided, therefore satisfying that particular condition. While it is acknowledged that the LLFA are not fully satisfied with the details, it remains the case that the construction of the units within the plots cannot proceed until condition B5 has been fully discharged. On this basis, it is considered that a suitably worded planning condition can secure the provision of the means of surface water drainage for plot D1, and the reserved matters application should not be withheld. The recommendation is to permit the application with the conditions as set out. In summary, the proposed development represents a good quality design, and there will be no significant harm to the visual means of the area, including views from the wider landscape. All technical issues have been addressed within the application or are covered by conditions of the hybrid planning application, although set out in the recommendation. It is therefore accepted that the proposed development is a sustainable form of development that accords with the development plan policies identified in the guidance and requirements of the MPPF and should be supported in accordance with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Nick, I believe we have a speaker tonight on this item that's speaking in support. I'm not aware of anybody identified speaking against the proposal. I believe it's Mr. Matthew Stocks, who's an agent speaking in support of this application, and he's joining us online. I believe that's him there.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Just to make you aware, you've got 5 minutes to make your speech. At the end of 4 minutes, our officer will remind you that you have a minute left. So if you would like to introduce your speech, you may do it now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, councillors and chair, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm Matthew Stocks from WSP. We are the agents and planning consultants working on behalf of the applicant, Harworth. I've been working with Harworth in relation to a number of previous planning applications relating to this key employment site at Chatterley Valley, and I've presented to you previously over the past 4 or 5 years. You may recall previously seeing plans for this site in 2019, where you supported officers' recommendations to grant a hybrid planning application for the redevelopment of the site. And then in 2020, where you supported proposed amendments to that planning permission. And then in 2021, where you supported a further amendment application and an additional application for earthworks. The whole of the Chatterley Valley site now benefits from an outline planning permission for industrial distribution warehouse employment uses, and full planning permission for earthworks to create the necessary infrastructure and development plateaus on which buildings would be located. If you've been anywhere near the site recently, you'll have seen that contractors are on site, and those earthworks are now well underway. The application before you is for the first phase of built development on the site, the first reserve matters, and this is plot D1, which, as was just shown to you, is in the northwestern corner of the site, a prominent location at the entrance. And it's for a building to be in B2 and B8 employment use of just over 7,000 square metres GIA. There's not at this point a confirmed operator for the building, but Harworth is having positive discussions on this and indeed the other plots within the development. The commencement of the earthworks and indeed this application for Harworth's first speculative building on the site are both major milestones that demonstrate Harworth's commitment to delivering the redevelopment of this allocated key development site in Newcastle-under-Lyme and the realisation of its associated benefits. Indeed, the commencement of earthworks it has encouraged further potential occupiers to come forward and has helped facilitate those discussions. So Harworth are confident this site will come forward and secure viable interest. It's important to consider this application in front of you in the context of the wider Chatterley Valley development site. So the plan you've just seen and the red line boundary and development proposed under this reserve matters application it is just a smaller part of the wider Chatterley Valley site, and it seeks to make best use of this flat level development plateau in terms of the proposed building and car parking. And whilst the plateau site does include landscaping, it's the surrounding swathes of land which separate the plots which will accommodate the majority of landscaping. We've held positive discussions with the LPA and its consultees prior to submission and throughout the consideration of this application. And this has resulted in the positive committee report in front of you and recommendation. And as just discussed, you've received the supplementary report noting the additional proposed condition which requires drainage details, and the applicant is happy to accept this. We have separately submitted applications related to the site-wide detailed drainage scheme for the site, which are being considered by the LLFA, and we're confident that an acceptable drainage scheme for the site can be agreed and delivered. Just leaves me to say that I hope you agree with the planning department's conclusion that the proposal is indeed policy compliant, and their recommendation to grant planning permission for the scheme in front of you. The approval of the application will enable the construction of employment uses to move ahead. I'd be happy to take on board any feedback or queries from councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stocks, for your contribution this evening, and thank you also for your contribution working with the local planning authority. What ordinarily happens now, we have the debate. You have no further course in this process. There isn't a question and answers process in this that once you've made your speech. So I will now open it over to the floor and councillors for comment and debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask on page 40, the landscape development section, has there been any response to this about the lack of planting and the diversion of foot markings and all of that. Have we had any response back on that?
Chair, we've had no further responses from the landscape section, but we haven't asked for their additional comments as such. Your officers have considered the information before us and are content with the level of information provided, and we're happy to recommend the application for approval.
Further questions? Okay, in which case, do we have a proposer for the application and a second, please?
I'm happy to propose the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Jill. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support of that, please? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. Approved. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 7, application for major development, land off Watermills Road, Chesterton, Newcastle. Is this you, Nick? This you, is it? Yeah, okay. We have a presentation from officers to follow shortly.
This application seeks to vary conditions 2 and 10 of planning permission 2463 FUL, which was for was a full planning consent for 67 dwellings on the site that you can see on the screen off Watermills Road in Chesterton. The variations comprise changes to the application site boundary, very minor changes to the boundary, access changes, again, very minor, layout and house types. So condition 2 lists the approved drawings, and condition 10 requires the provision of visibility displays in accordance with an approved plan. So they're not seeking to not provide the visibility displays, but because it makes reference to a specific plan that they're looking to replace, then that's why they're wanting to vary that condition to make reference to a different plan number. So the number of dwellings will remain unchanged from the approved scheme, and the proposed layout of the site would be very similar. So I'll just show you the approved and proposed. So this is the approved scheme with access at this point, dwellings fronting Watermills Road. Some members may remember the scheme. And a total of 67 dwellings. The house types that were approved were relatively contemporary, I suppose, in that the materials were to comprise render, timber cladding and cement board cladding. But the design now proposed would be more traditional, comprising red brick and tiled pitched roofs. The layout that's now proposed is this one in front of you. So again, access is in the same location, just some very, very minor changes to the access radii. Again, dwellings along the frontage, facing onto Watermills Road, main access here to the rear of the site, and the dwellings sited around the road. So I'll just go back and show you again the approved scheme. So the proposals would provide a mix of 2 and 3 bed dwellings comprising detached, semi-detached and townhouses, which is the same as previously approved. All the dwellings would be 2-storey, again, same as previously approved. That's an example of a couple of the house types. Again, as I said, just red brick and tiled pitched roofs. And that's just a photo to show you the properties on the other side of Audley Road. So the site is separated from Audley Road by a substantial landscaped bund, but the dwellings on the northeastern side of Audley Road that you can see here are the closest reference, and they are predominantly semi-detached or terraced and are traditional in design, comprising brick and tile. Therefore, it's considered that the proposed amendments would respect local character in terms of housing layout and design. The amount of open space within the site is very similar to that in the approved scheme, and the section 106 for the site on the previously approved scheme would still stand, would still be relevant or still applicable for this site, and that requires a financial contribution towards off-site public open space in the area. Finally, the previous scheme comprised 25% affordable housing provision, which accords with our policy requirement, but this revised scheme would comprise 100% affordable units, which significantly exceeds the requirements of both the existing section 106, which requires the 25%, and also the council's affordable housing SPD. Thank you.
Very much, Rachel. I'll open it up to members now, please. Councillor Holland, followed by Councillor Fear. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. To the west of the site, there is a badger set exclusion zone. Under the approved plans, the entire area of that exclusion circle that's within the site boundary would have fallen within public open space. In the revised, and I can see that is also where they've changed the boundary of the site itself. The plans we're being asked to approve include a lot of that circle within somebody's back garden. I'm wondering if that has any impact either on the badgers or on the amenity of the people who will be living in that dwelling. Thank you.
So you mean at this point here? Yeah. Well, just bear with me. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not, I don't believe that would have any impact on either the badgers or the amenity of the existing property. I don't think it would stop them using that being usable garden space. So no, it's not something that we're concerned about.
Are you content with that, Councillor Holland?
Happy with that answer, but I have a supplementary, if I may, Chair. There have been other changes made to the parts of the site that will be kept reserved as public and open space. Is there any meaningful impact on the cost of upkeep for those areas, or the difficulty to maintain them? I can see they've moved the site around somewhat, but is there anything we should be concerned about? Is there any change that we should be looking to condition as a result of that alteration in where those spaces are? Because they're in a slightly darker or more vibrant shade of green on the plan that's in front of us. I think those are the spaces.
So the open space that's within the site would be maintained by the developer or by a management company. And then there's a contribution being made to off-site public open space. But our landscape section did express some concerns that they felt that there was a loss in the amount of public open space that was being provided. But in looking into that in a bit more detail, I was able to determine that the scheme that they were remembering was a previous outline consent back in 2013 that was allowed at appeal, and that did show some quite substantial areas of open space. But the most recent permission, which is this one here, and that's a fallback position because they can still implement that consent. Although the location of the open space within the site has changed, the amount hasn't reduced significantly. So we don't consider that it would be reasonable to raise any issue with that based on that fallback position.
Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the officer for the previous reply, which has confirmed what I suspected, which is there is a fallback position here, and we need to be aware of that when we determine this application. In general, I'm minded to vote for this recommendation for two reasons, really, above all. One is the very welcome affordable housing provision, which is, as the officers pointed out, it couldn't be more, could it, in advance of what we require as a minimum, as 100%. The other one, frankly, is also the change in housing types. I think the materials that are being used are far more consonant with the locality now, and indeed are likely to be more durable and less of an eyesore in the future. And I'm very suspicious of both the bland cladding, which will stain, and indeed having had a look at wooden cladding across not just our own borough but the city next door, very often I think it sort of discolours in ways that are surprising and not particularly pleasant. So I think this is a planning gain all round, really, and I'm minded to vote for this recommendation.
And for raising that issue. It is an improvement. I think also that I'd be inclined to agree with you that the materials does bring about an improvement. And I would be happy to second that from the chair if we don't have any more proposals in the meantime. But do councillors still wish to debate the item? I don't see any other councillors identifying. So we have a proposal to support the application from Councillor Fear and myself to second that formally from the chair. Can I see a show of hands, please, in support of that? And that is unanimous. So that is clearly passed. Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item number 8, 1 London Road, Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is one of 2 applications you'll see on the agenda for the 1 London Road site, which is the significant was originally student accommodation developments on London Road and adjacent to the Lyme Valley. So sorry, I'm not sharing, am I? Sorry. I'll do that in a minute. Full planning permission is sought to vary condition 7 of planning application 161106 FUL, which was the original permission for redevelopment of the site for 499 student apartments. So the proposal seeks to allow for the use of the development by not only students, but also by staff from the hospital. Condition 7 currently restricts occupation, or originally restricted occupation of the development to students only, and permission has then been granted on 2 occasions for the temporary variation of that condition to allow occupation of the accommodation by any person, student or non-student. And the most recent temporary consent ends on the 31st of August this year. Those previous applications to vary condition 7 on a temporary basis were submitted because the COVID-19 pandemic had major implications for the student accommodation sector, with significantly reduced occupancy levels being observed. Following the grant of the temporary consents, there's been significant demand for the accommodation from hospital workers. The applicant has confirmed that they would accept restrictions on occupancy by non-students to essential workers employed at the Royalstoke University Hospital only. And they would also accept a restriction on the number of rooms where occupation by hospital workers is allowed to no more than 200. So you'll see in the agenda report that would result in 299 rooms still being solely for students. The site is in close proximity to the hospital where the non-students would be employed, and it is located within easy walking and cycling distance of the shops and services in the town centre, as well as public transport connections. The applicant has advised that generally approximately 30 parking spaces are in use across the site, And site visits carried out by your officers during the day, the evening and the weekend do demonstrate that a significant number of spaces remain available. Subject to restrictions on the number and the nature of non-students allowed to occupy the site, and given the sustainable location of the site, it is not considered that highway safety impacts would be severe, and it is also not considered reasonable to request either affordable housing provision or an additional financial contribution towards public open space. I have got, if you do wish to see them, I have got some photos of the when we visited the site to have a look at the parking. So I'll just show you those. I don't think I did that. Right, so these ones were taken at about 8:30 last night. So there's 3 main areas of car parking on the site. So this was one of them. This is my car there, so don't need to count that one, but yeah, you can see that there's a number of spaces still vacant. This is another area of the site. This was probably the one that had the greatest number of spaces in, but so you can see along that row there's probably at least half of them empty, and several more in that Undercroft bit. And then this area, sorry, which is the one above there, this had just 2 cars within it. So I think I did request that the applicant gave us information that or any information that they had on the usage of car parking spaces, and as I say, they did suggest that approximately 30 spaces tend to be in use, and certainly from the visits that we've made, the evidence does suggest that that's correct. Thank you. 8:30 in an evening, but I've also visited at the weekend, although I didn't take any photos then. Nick visited this morning, and we have got other photos actually on the next application presentation, I think, haven't we, showing what it was like at 8 o'clock this morning or a bit later, but 9:30 this morning. So, okay.
Biz now, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have a couple of comments on this, but I am minded to both support this and move the recommendation. I mean, I work occasionally at the hospital and talk to colleagues who use this accommodation and are very happy with it. And it certainly has been a benefit to those staff who work. I've been worked in hospitals long enough in the 90s to remember when hospitals came with accommodation like this and no longer do, unfortunately. So, you know, historically, there has always been a need for accommodation close to hospital sites that can provide, in some cases temporary, in some cases long-standing accommodation of this nature. So it is good to see. We granted the permission to do this twice on a temporary basis. I think that was very much a test case. I agree with it. I think that it's good to see that it's being used. I do have a query on the car parking. I have heard that it's been checked multiple times this week, and I'm not sure if the weekend, did you mean the weekend we've just had? And I hate to say that term's been out for quite a while. So if there are students that would normally park there, they're not going to be parked there at the moment, because all bar sort of 5% of the student population are away. That said, I'm minded to accept the feedback that's come from the applicant about the use and the capacity within the car park to accommodate the change as we will recommend. One thing I would say is that we haven't had this has been almost an interesting experiment, having a mixed use accommodation where some of it is for students, some of it for key workers at the hospital. And as of yet, I've not heard of any major issues that have come from that site with that mixed use. And I think when we look at some of these accommodation blocks, perhaps it is a more sustainable use of them going forward. Unfortunately, when built, there was a big boom projection in the number of students that were going to be coming to the universities in the area. Unfortunately, those numbers haven't translated through for whatever reason. So seeing good use of these accommodation blocks, I think, is vital. So yes, I am minded to move that we accept the recommendations as outlined by the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, Councillor Holland, and then Councillor Fear. Thank you.
I remember when we granted planning consent for this development as student accommodation, and I know that comments were made at the time that perhaps this might have been a more suitable site for key worker accommodation associated with the hospital, but it was not considered at the time, and we were asked we have been asked on two previous occasions to give temporary permission for non-student occupation of these blocks, on the basis that the pandemic had occurred and was ongoing. And we found those arguments compelling, and we gave that temporary consent. We're now being asked to extend it or to make it permanent, purely because it is expedient for the applicant. And I'm afraid I'm not convinced. Had we been invited to consider this development for non-students ab origine, we would have looked to secure more contribution for public open space, for amenity, for infrastructure. We would have been looking at a developer or an applicant who wanted to build accommodation that was for families or for key workers to be contributing more to the community. And we would have been asking for more parking on site. And we're now being asked, with no material change to the inside of this building, the ones that are already occupied, to allow indefinitely for mixed use by, I wouldn't want to say adults, but by non-students. And it's a very sad future for our NHS if we're asking for it to be staffed by people and telling them, well, actually, you shouldn't have families because you're going to live in an egg box next to a student, and you shouldn't drive a car because even though it is very sustainable for getting to work, what about nurses or whoever chooses to live here? What about all the other things that they want to do with their lives that don't involve going to and from work, outside of the daily commute? I'm afraid I'm disappointed and I won't vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Just draw your attention that there is a maximum of 200 essential workers to be occupying this site. Officers would like to make a comment?
It's just also to emphasise that it's not just come about from, on a whim from the applicant. It's also, you'll see in the agenda report how important it is to the hospital. In fact, I had the hospital contact me probably 12 months ago to discuss this because they had such concerns about the fact that it was only a temporary consent at the time. And they were saying how critical it is to their accommodation offer. And you'll see it in that letter there that they say that the One London Road property has been vital for their international nurse recruitment, and we anticipate further international recruitment in the coming years, whether that be for nurses or other healthcare professionals. And as Councillor Northcote stated there, it is only for 200 out of a total of 499 rooms. So there will still be nearly 300 rooms that will be exclusively for occupancy by students.
Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as listening to the last two speakers, as so often I find myself somewhat in the middle of the road here. I share Councillor Holland's concerns about us effectively bailing out a speculative builder. And I do think we have to be very clear that that's not what this committee is about at the end of the day. On the other hand, I am also very conscious of what our officer just said, Mr. Chairman, and I think what Councillor Jones alluded to, which is that the hospital itself is very keen on this for the servicing of the North Staffs Hospital. And obviously we want that venture to succeed. I too, when this thing was first proposed, was very concerned about the car parking. I think Councillor Holland has been eloquent and he's correct in thinking that, you know, people don't just use motor cars as a thing to get to their place of work or indeed to go shopping. They use them for leisure activities, for visiting their relatives and such like. So some of this sort of nonsense that if you live next to a bus stop, you won't want a car, I think really is nonsense. That said, I'm not sure that the change of occupancy here is going to affect the amount of ownership of motor cars on the site as a whole. In other words, I think students are probably as likely to possess a motor car as the people who are proposed to occupy these 200 units. And let's remember, 200 units out of 500 is what, 40%? It's quite a lot at the end of the day. It's not a little bolt-on. But that said, and given the fact that I note there's been no, as far as I know, and the officer I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong, there's been no representation from the councillors of Town Ward that there has been a parking problem generated by this development. And I would listen to local members were they to make such comments. I feel overall, and this is where I want to seek assurance, that if we say we are going to do this because of the very special circumstances of the hospital's need and our knowledge of that need, I am happy to vote for this recommendation. I will be a little bit more worried if what we do is set a precedent whereby other developers will come where the hospital is not involved in any shape or form and simply want to change their terms of reference as well. In other words, if I can be persuaded that this is answering a specific need for a very worthwhile cause, I think I will vote for this recommendation. Otherwise, I will have to sit back and think rather hard.
Councillor Fear.
Yes, I mean, you see the variation to the condition as drafted. It's specifically setting out limited to full-time students and a maximum of 200 essential workers employed at the Royal Stoke University Hospital only. And with every condition that we write, we give a reason for that condition. And in giving a justification for that condition, we could make reference to the particular circumstances of this site in relation to the hospital.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chairman. If that sort of could be written into the condition, I think it would reassure myself and maybe some other members of the committee. I don't know.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I'm sure that can be accommodated. Okay. Councillor Jill Williams.
I'm going to agree with Councillor Holland on this one. Car parking in the town when we've closed some of our when we're going to close some of our smaller car parks is going to be a premium. So we either open this up to the public or we say no. I mean, the same developers coming in next to ask us to decrease car parking. We can't guarantee all these workers are not going to have a car, can we? Where are they going to park? They'll park in the side street. The town will not be able to accommodate that. I totally disagree with this.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll just take the other Councillor Williams before we come back on that.
Similar lines, really. We discuss things, but again, we've got different opinions. My concern is we're setting a precedent here for the future. And I think we've been backed into a corner by the remarks about the Royal Stoke staff at the Royal Stoke of Health. And so if we refuse this, we put in causing a problem. They won't be able to accommodate the staff. They won't be able to bring staff in from other areas to work at the Royal Stoke. So, you know, I've got a feeling this developer is taking us for a ride, you know, purely. And the next application, sorry, the next item, it's on the same site. So why are they split up? I've got to, you know, again, we're being conned. I'll put it that way. That if we accept that people working at the Royal Stoke will come and take on these single apartments, won't have cars, and they won't have children. That's, you know, so what are you going to do if they have a child? Are they going to be thrown out of their property? You know, they'll be in a little small, or the bed sets, whatever you want to call them. So no, I think they are students, and this developer, I feel this developer is taking us for a ride from the word go. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I can vote for this this permit this alteration in the. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams and Councillor Williams. You want to come back there? Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the councillor's just said raises a question which, again, I think might, if we can clarify, it might help some of us come to a decision. I'm correct in saying that these are individual single bed flats, and I'm guessing I might be, and this is where it becomes interesting for me, I'm guessing that means that the terms of occupancy are for single individuals. In other words, there is no issue here of families and such like moving into these units. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, I don't think, well, it just wouldn't physically be possible for more than one person to occupy, and presumably if a worker at the hospital did have a baby or something, they would have to move elsewhere.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding that this accommodation is used very similar to how the workers' accommodation on hospitals used to be used. And as somebody who has experience of that, it's typically inhabited by people very early on in their career, and is reflective of the way that work has changed post-pandemic, where people quite often don't live anywhere near where they work anymore, certainly don't want to move because of nature of being settled with families. And quite often, certainly I know from my experience at the university and at the hospital in that location, that a lot of staff these days tend to live close to sites for the days during the week that they work, which might only be 2 or 3 days that they're actually on site for clinical duties, and then will return home, some of which might live in Scotland, Yorkshire, Wales, absolutely anywhere else in the country, and therefore are looking for a similar accommodation to those that students look for, that are equally transient in the nature of their of how they live in the area. Now, I think that certainly, and I will continue to state that I have moved the recommendation, and hopefully somebody will be willing to second that. I think personally, I see no difference between the accommodation here and the accommodation that's previously been provided on hospital facilities, and therefore would see the same usage of it. So don't have any concerns that perhaps it's going to be used to house large numbers of families. And I think any staff that were moving into the area with a large family would probably look for alternate accommodation anyway.
Could I just ask another question? If that car park's not going to be used, what's the developer going to do with it? Perhaps we could open it up to the hospital to use, because you can't get a car park. There's no way you can park a car on there unless, you know, so what's going to happen to the car park if it's not going to using it?
I believe, Councillor Williams, the developer has to provide those spaces for the use of, and I mean, somebody who has been employed in a hospital environment. There are rota shifts. It's not used all the time. The staff come on duty, staff go off duty. So there's a movement of those spaces during the day. They're not all the same spaces used at the same time. So just to get in a snapshot, we're seeing here is from the product of those that may be on or off at that particular time. It's a continual process to move. I think opening it up for the rest of the town isn't something that's up for debate here, because it's part of this development. And I can't see that really holds water. I'll be standing corrected if, and like council officer colleague on the left has just confirmed that. Thank you. So 8 now, I think, unless there's somebody willing to propose against the scheme, I have a formal recommendation to move from Councillor Jones. I believe Councillor Fear, you'll second that.
Yes, I think I am. Having heard the debate, I think I am willing to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fear. So in that case, then, can I see a show of hands, please, for those in support of the application? Thank you. Can I see those against the application? 2. Can I see any abstentions? See 1 extension. Thank you. That's quite clearly moved, and that application is approved. Thank you very much. That, of course, segues onto the next application, which is item number 9, application for major development 1 London Road again.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the variation of condition 1 of a previous permission 22/00548/FUL to make amendments to the floor plans, roof plan and elevations of block 4 of this development on London Road, Newcastle. There are also changes proposed to the previously approved layout of the site, which affects car parking provision. So on the screen shows the proposed layout. Obviously, there are the blocks of the accommodation are clearly shown. Block 4 is down at the bottom of the site. There are changes to the layout of the scheme. I have got the previous site layout plan, which I'll show in a moment. But it'd be very hard to see the changes to the car parking provision. But in a small nutshell, the provision is changing here. So there's a reduction of spaces in this element here. In terms of the changes to the building, again, the changes are very minor, and I have got the previous elevation details. But again, I think members will find it very hard to see what those changes are. The amendments to the elevations, as I say, are considered to be minor, and such changes also reflect those agreed to other blocks within the development site and ensure that the design throughout the site is cohesive. I have got a couple of images as well. So the image on the screen shows the constructed blocks, including block 4, which has obviously already been constructed with the proposed elevational treatments. And as I mentioned, those details are very similar to other blocks on the site. This is the previously approved elevational details. They're removing these timber elements here. They're being removed and replaced with more cladding, I believe, because of ventilation and building regulation requirements. So that sort of detail is no longer being proposed. but that was removed on other blocks as well. So all the blocks will be similar in appearance. This is the previous layout, which again showed more car parking down this area here. And then just some more photographs showing the car parks on a very wet morning this morning. And again, similar photos to what you've previously seen. As set out in the main agenda report, there is a loss to car parking spaces, but your officers have carried out numerous site visits, particularly over the last week, and the existing provision seems to be between 30 and 60% take up. Obviously, acknowledging what Councillor Jones said on the previous item about term time, etc. However, the Highways Authority has raised no objections, and the proposed development would still present a policy compliant level of parking for the development and existing properties. The recommendation is to permit the application with the conditions set out in the main agenda report. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to members. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. Why have you split these two items? It's the same site. The entrances are different, you know, but it's the same site. So why have these two items been, or they made into two items instead of one? Thank you.
Our choice for the applicant to consider the applications in that way. The application that I've just presented came in first, has been in for a while because there's been discussions about it, and then the second application came in subsequently. There's no reason to consider them together as one application. They were for completely different considerations, albeit yes for the same site, but it's not the choice of your officers, it was just how they were presented to the council.
Thank you, Chair. Given the debate on availability of parking spaces on the previous item related to this, I do have significant concern with any reduction in parking spaces there. Whilst it was mentioned, the officer mentioned that the number of spaces would still be policy compliant. Is that the case given our decision that we just made under the previous item? Because under the previous item, where we've now agreed to 200 of those units to be for staff that work at the hospital, I don't think the number of parking spaces would necessarily be policy compliant. However, I'm willing to be corrected on that fact. Regardless of that, I would not be able to support an application that reduced the number of car parking spaces there purely on the basis that we approved the last one with the acceptance that the information we presented was given to us at a time when there would be less students parking there, given the it was outside of term times. And then secondly, on the basis that the applicant had said there was an estimated use of the car park. Given that, I just wouldn't be comfortable reducing the number of car parking spaces, I'm afraid.
Yeah, just you are correct. It would only be policy compliant if it was entirely student, on the basis of 200 spaces not being for students. Then yeah, it wouldn't. But when we refer to policy compliant, those standards, those car parking standards are maximum standards. So they're not set out requiring a minimum, they're requiring a maximum. So yes, it wouldn't be policy compliant, but our view is because of the particular circumstances of the people that will be occupying the site, as we discussed on the previous application, and because of the sustainable location of the site, that the number of parking spaces is acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's those happier Lions evenings. I think Councillor Jones has put his finger precisely on my concerns in this regard. We've got to worry about the parking, I think. I think Councillor Jones, again, comes from the same background as me academically. I mean, it is the case that large numbers of students are not present at the moment, and without accurate evidence from the developer of what average use would be in the middle of term, I think I'm very, very reluctant to vote for a reduction, particularly now, as the councillor has pointed out, we are moving to a world which is not compliant. I find it depressing in a way that, in particular, we can see the halving of disabled facilities here, which it's in, and we're only, at that point, and I suspect we're not now compliant either, but even then we were dancing on the very edge of compliance, it seems to me, when I read this conflict. So I'm afraid at the moment, unless I hear something very positive to the contrary, like my colleague, Councillor Jones, I'm minded, I'm afraid, to vote against this one, whereas I was reasonably happy with the previous one.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fear. Do you have any other councillors? Councillor Gorton, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded to vote against this application because what I haven't read, what I haven't heard really is a convincing argument to let it go through. I'm really unclear as to what the objectives of the applicant are. And in the absence, as I say, of a very clear explanation as to the benefits of this particular scheme, I'm minded actually to vote against.
Thank you, Councillor Gorton. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're asked to take each item as its own merit. But what this application will do will cause problems. And we're only talking a few parking spaces. But I can assure Councillor Fear asked that there has no representation from the town councillors on parking in the area. But I know people live in Subsgate and those streets down there. And the arguments forever of people parking in those streets. Also, the car park behind home base, which is owned by the Borough Council. I know people want to go down there to exercise the dogs and walk around. They can't park there because the car park is full from people from the hospital or take it to be the hospital. The proposal to close Goose Street, sell Goose Street car park off, which is just round the corner. So again, it'll put more pressure on people to park in the streets at the southern end of the town centre. So any reduction in car parking spaces, I think it can't be right. So I'll be voting against this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Crisp.
Thank you, Chair. When I was at uni, I did dentistry and I did a vocational training year. But after I completed a course, so all the time I was at uni, I had no car. And I think it's people, similar points in their career are going to be coming down to the site. And the first thing I did when I started getting a wage after 4 years of not having a wage was I bought a car. So I think if you're introducing more people in that point in their career into university, I think you're going to need the car parking space more than if it was just students.
Information, Councillor Crisp. Did you stay in that accommodation? Did you have a different accommodation afterwards when you qualified?
No, I stayed there.
With your car?
I actually had a car parking space for the time I stayed there and didn't realise it. And then someone told me, and then that might have put a contribute to my decision to get a car, but yeah, as soon as I had some money, I got a car.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Do I see any other councillors wishing to speak on this item? Okay, that remains to me to go on to the next phase. Do I see any councillors that are in support and are willing to raise a proposal to support this application? I see none. Do I see those willing to move a refusal And if that's the case, are firm grounds now. I've picked up reduction in parking spaces is not acceptable. And the reduction proposal to reduce the disabled bays from 16 to 8 is also not acceptable.
I think
wish to
the
add anything?
councillor would, I hope, would agree with me that he raised the question of policy compliance. And if this isn't compliant, that would seem to me to be an obvious reason that should be put there.
Given the last decision. Thank you, councillor. So, Councillor Jones, you were willing to move on those. Do I have a second of Councillor Diamond? So are we saying highway safety then? In terms of the car parking provision?
Because we have to be saying what the harm would be. So if we say that we're objecting to the reduction in the number of car parking spaces, are you saying that that reduction would lead to, I think you're saying that it would lead to more on-street parking around the area, but are you saying that that additional on-street parking would have highway safety implications, or are you saying that it would be a residential amenity implications in that it would mean that people can't
Both, I
park?
think both.
Right, okay.
Thank you. You read my mind entirely.
Do we need anything else? Proposal to refuse, citing those conditions that we've just mentioned in terms of amenity and highway safety, in terms of policy compliance. Can I see a show of hands in support of the refusal? And that's unanimous. Therefore, that application fails. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to item 10 on the agenda, application for minor development, the Whammy, Lower Malhouse Lane, Newcastle. I believe this is Nick. Over to you, Nick. I believe.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the construction of a new sports pavilion in association with the adjacent playing fields at the Whammy, Lower Malhouse Lane. The application site is situated within the urban area of Newcastle as defined on a local development framework proposals map. The site layout plan shows the position of the building in the context of the area and adjacent to the extended rear gardens of existing properties on St Bernard's Road. This is St Bernard's Road here, and the application site is here, adjacent to the existing car parking area for the playing fields. Again, the site layout plan shows the building in question here, with a pedestrian link to the existing car parking area, and you can just see the extended gardens of properties on St Bernard's Road. The elevation plan showed the design of the building, which is considered acceptable. The applicant has sought to address concerns regarding antisocial behaviour and flood risk within the application. In terms of antisocial behaviour, the applicant was approached in relation to the concerns raised and has now incorporated security fencing adjacent to both the southeast and southwest corners of the building. So that fencing is in this position here, which would prevent access to the rear of the building, and then 2.4 metre high mesh fencing here, which again will restrict access to the rear of the building. The roof has been designed with large overhangs of at least 600 mm on either side, with larger hangs on the front overhangs on the front and rear to prevent people from being able to climb up and access the roof. These design features, together with the use of security shutters, are sufficient to deter any unauthorised use of the building. In terms of flood risk, the submitted flood risk assessment includes mitigation measures which suitably address any concerns in this respect. The recommendation is to permit the application with the conditions set out in the supplementary report on the basis that the proposed development would support an existing established use of the site as a community football pitch and would not raise any adverse impacts and would accord with the policy of the development plan and the aims and objectives of the NPPF. Thank you.
There's no speakers on this item. I'll open it up to members. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Delighted to hear that the sort of security aspects of the application have been strengthened. Got a question though. Have we had any representations or any feedback at all from the residents whose gardens will be adjoining the new facility?
The main agenda report says that no representations have been received. Neighbour letters were sent to those properties, and on the basis that no comments have been received, it's assumed that they've got no concerns or observations to make.
Okay, thank you.
Williams. Councillor Williams, do you mind using your microphone, please?
Said, or did anybody hear me? Do you want me to repeat what I've just said? Right. First, can I say I welcome this development. I'm sure it will be a great asset to Nottingham Crossing, but I do have a few misgivings. If we are going to sell up the piece of land opposite for the development, we should be looking at safety issues now. A pedestrian crossing is definitely needed on this extremely busy road. New houses mean more families with young children who want to play on the whammy. Children from Cotswold Avenue will have to cross a very busy road, and 51 car spaces will not be adequate to accommodate visiting football teams from outside the area. Along with families coming to watch and use the pavilion socially, which we have never had on that place before. And I'm sure the pavilion is going to be a great asset, as we have no community centre in Nottingham now, and more people will be wanting to use it. We definitely going to need more car parking or safety on that road. Thank you.
That one hasn't gone beyond 7:30 for a while. So. Councillor Williams, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I firstly thank the officer for the very good report on this item. We have been in touch and we've spoken to the planning officer over the weeks before coming to this committee. I think the positives outweigh the negatives, and the positive is a pavilion there to be used by hopefully the football players and also the park run, which is very, very successful in that area. And I've spoken to a few of the runners, the participants, and they welcome this facility. On saying that, I feel that they haven't done enough to combat antisocial behaviour. They have listened, the officers have listened, and the point, or the applicant has listened, putting the fencing at the side, just by the houses, between the boundary of the houses and the pavilion. But then it's open to the elements. And I feel there should be park fencing actually around the site. There's no man's land, right up to the pavilion, but away from the pavilion to secure it a lot better than it is. And really, there's resources to do this. It's in the what's it called, the master plan that's come from the town deal. And it's all about satisfying Sport England, this application, because the Borough Council want to sell the old football field off across the road, so they need to say that yes, we are providing facilities, and also the County Council, Staffordshire County Council, on the land on Black Bank, again a football field. So to sell them off, you've got to say to Sport England, we are providing this particular a better facility. So there's resources to make that more secure. It's just, again, onto what are the local people getting from this? They just can get more traffic, which will increase the danger of crossing over Low Mileage Lane, a very, very busy road. And we all know when match days, there is double parking on each side of that road when the car park's always full. And so that's a success in a way, but the double parking down that road. And we've got to wait for somebody to be injured crossing that road. So there's a reason to put a pedestrian crossing across that A34, and I don't put everything on this development really, but because there's a need for a crossing anyway, because it continues the cycle path that takes through from town centre, Apedale Road. We've tried to get one for years, trying to get a crossing there, and I think this will make it more dangerous to cross the Mile House Lane when this particular development goes ahead. I'm not going to vote against it. I'm going to vote for it, but like I said, the one outweighs the other, and that's what I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman, and that's our views on particular item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams, for your contribution. Before I ask officers to come back on this, I'll ask Councillor Fear, who's been waiting very patiently in the background. Thank you.
That's very kind of you to say so, Mr. Chairman. I welcome this development. I think the encouragement of, in particular, team sport and all the sort of pluses of self-discipline, social responsibility that brings is an excellent thing. I think also clearly it's nicer for and good for bonding team spirit, I think, to be able to change in a changing room rather than, as I suspect kids do, changing the parents' cars and what have you. So in that regard, this has got to be a major plus, I think. I one who makes a regular pilgrimage on Sunday lunchtimes to go to the lovely cafe at the Apedale Heritage Centre, and I go along the old railway line. I take Councillor Williams' point about the busyness of that road, but I'm not convinced in my own mind that the building of this will demonstrably increase that. My question, if I may, is about, again, security. I mean, my first thought about this was antisocial behaviour. I'm heartened to hear that letters have been sent to the residents adjacent to this development, and that I'm assuming that no one is written back, that they are content with the measures that have been taken. What I'd like to know about, though, is something which may affect them and they might not have thought about, which is what happens to the small strip of land that will be left between the building and the curtilage of those houses with these two gates on either side. Will there still be access to that back area? Because I can see it being an area where people throw tins, you're going to get vermin, so it will need to be maintained in some way. So I'd just be interested in knowing how that all fits together.
Councillor Fear. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. In some ways, it probably is a declaration of an interest, but it's not pecuniary, in that I do go to this site every Saturday to take the lad to play football on those very playing fields illustrated there. I think these facilities are desperately needed. I am one of those parents that unfortunately has to supervise the changing of the lad out the back of the car, and quite often people driving up and down Lower Milehouse Lane get an eyeful of things they might not want to get an eyeful of. So this will go a long way to protecting the visual amenity of those who are passing through the area. I do also agree with the comments from Councillor Jill Williams about the need for a facility such as this. Without the community centre in the village centre of Nutton anymore, a facility like this doesn't just serve its primary purpose of providing changing facilities for the use of the sports fields, but also provides a much needed community space in that area. And I could see quite a lot of use of that from other associated groups within the Nutton and Crossheath areas. I'm also fully aware of the comments raised by Councillor Jill Williams, Councillor John Williams, both ward councillors, who raised the issue of the traffic on Lower Milehouse Lane. I do have to say there are times when I think, well, it isn't that bad, and there's also times when it is quite hectic there, and the introduction of these facilities may increase that. So I feel that whilst I am in support of this application, given the concerns of the two ward councillors and the traffic that I observe when transversing that area at busy times, that perhaps whilst I'm not aware that we would be able to insist on a crossing patrol as part of this application because it doesn't fall into that, perhaps this is something that we could raise as part of this, that our concerns with the Highways Department, that the addition of this facility may increase the traffic on Lower Milehouse Lane, and therefore it would be good for them to consider that and perhaps undertake traffic monitoring when the site is up and running.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Have we got any other members wishing to speak on this item? In which case we'll go through to the...
Can I just ask if we got a reply about the security and the backland?
That, yeah.
No, sorry, I thought you were going to go to the vote, Mr. Chairman. I do apologise.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Councillor Fear, that we now go to the officers for come back on the questions that have been asked.
Yeah, so in terms of the fencing and the no man's land at the rear of the building, the plans do show a gate and fencing. So I assume that gate would allow that area of land to be maintained and cleaned and as and when is necessary. In terms of any highway safety impacts that members have raised this evening, the Highways Authority have raised no objections to the development, and there's no reason your officers believe that we should go against that advice in this instance. And in terms of other security measures, again, the police did provide comments on the application. The applicant took note of those comments, has taken steps forward to improve security. It has to be said that a building in this location is possibly, unfortunately, going to attract antisocial behaviour. But the applicant is doing all it can to design out any unnecessary antisocial behaviour. So as I've mentioned, your officers are still supportive of the scheme that's been presented. Thank you.
Anything to add? Councillor Jones?
Chair, thank you. I appreciate the comments from the officer on the citing the highways report on traffic at the site. Perhaps given that having been a county councillor and understanding how difficult it is to get any kind of highways modification without sufficient data, and having quite often dealt with these situations where highways have said there's not that much to be concerned about, but being the local member and seeing that, knowing different, a recommendation to suggest that might make it easier for the local members that the applicant undertake the cost of a traffic survey, which I know is quite a cheap thing to actually undertake. We're talking a few £1,000s to do, where that is quite difficult to get out of highways, that the applicant would be willing to do that once the site or the building is built and in use. And then therefore, if there is the increased traffic, that would provide the evidence that the members could take to highways for a crossing patrol to go in there.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. No harm in asking, although we can't actually force them to do it. There's no harm in asking, is there?
I'm sure the applicant has probably heard what we've said.
Please so, Councillor Jones. Councillor Williams.
Just a small thing. Councillor Fears just reminded me on, I was going to ask a question, whether it's in the report, the colour of the fencing. It's important that we don't have this palisade, aluminium palisade fencing there, but actually the colour of the fencing, or what kind of fencing it is, that blends in with the green area. So that may suggest have a green coloured fencing. Thank you.
Yeah, mesh fencing. I think either way, we can have an additional condition that specifies that all fencing should be coloured green.
Mesh fencing, not this palisade fencing. These are on this, not the palisade fencing you see on industrial estates. This is a residential area, so you want some quality stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, the plans clearly show a mesh style fence, but again, we can be more specific in a condition just to say that the type of fencing should be mesh style and coloured a dark green or a green colour.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson, and then that's it, I think, in terms of comments.
Very quick question again. Can I ask about the collection of the trade waste? We have a kitchen and a social area, so there's obviously going to be some waste. Just to check that the trucks can get in to either collect the trade waste Euro bins, or whether they're going to be collecting the residual and the recycle bins. Thank you.
There's anything in the report that considers waste collection arrangements. Again, an additional condition could be imposed that those details are submitted for the avoidance of doubt. I do think that it is a valid point.
Could I add, Mr. Chairman, that if we have a condition like that and a Euro bin is being considered, that some question perhaps surrounding that back area is where the Euro bin could be kept, because that's the sort of magnet for antisocial behaviour you will get if you're not careful.
Good point, Councillor Fear. We got that. Have we got a formal proposer and seconder then, please? Councillor Jones and Councillor Jill Williams, I'll take this time to second it. So can I see those in favour of the proposal raise their hands now at this point? Thank you, and that is unanimously passed. Thank you. The next item on the agenda tonight, we're nearly there, is item 11, 5 Bogs Cottages, Keele. Are councillors wishing to ask a question, or are they content to receive the report as read? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you, Chair. Thanks again for this report being on the agenda. I think it's quite critical. 5 Bogs Cottage falls within my ward at Keele. I note the report and I'm pleased to see the update from officers. However, I've received a significant number of concerns in direct relation to the submission of plans. And these concerns are about the locations of drainage sites and how they plan to connect up to the water works in the area. Residents themselves are quite concerned because they have struggled to get any kind of meaningful contact with Severn Trent over this to be able to raise their concerns directly. And as a consequence, are quite concerned that this could be signed off without any due understanding of the movement of pipes through the area there. So I guess my request is, would officers be willing to work with the residents and Severn Trent to arrange a site visit that is attended by both officers of the planning department, Severn Trent and residents, so they can fully explain their concerns about the points of where the connections are due to be made and whether those connections will actually be safe or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Well, officers have been in dialogue with Severn Trent, trying desperately to organise a site visit with Severn Trent. At the minute, a date hasn't been set, but officers are still pushing Severn Trent to attend a site visit, and it's very unlikely that the officers would pass any drainage scheme unless they fully understand the scheme that they're being asked to approve. And in my opinion, in order to do that, we need Severn Trent's advice, and a site visit is critical to that. In terms of whether residents will be able to attend that site visit, it may be able to be arranged that they can attend a site visit. Whether it's that actual site visit, I can't say that until we've had further discussion and dialogue with Severn Trent. And it may be that we have, first of all, have a site meeting with Severn Trent, or a discussion with Severn Trent, and then decide whether we need the formal input of residents at a site visit or not, and then take it from there. But I have been in regular dialogue with the residents. I've exchanged numerous emails over the last 2 or 3 days, and I will continue to do that, or the local planning authority will continue to do that. But yes, in a nutshell, we are desperately trying to get Severn Trent on site with officers. The chief executive has also said that he wishes to attend that site visit. So that's something that we're really pushing hard to get in the diary. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Nick for all the hard work on this. I really do appreciate, and I'm sure residents do appreciate as well. And I think it's going to be warm words to hear that that you would have concern with approving a plan without being able to be fully confident that meets the requirements, and that a site visit would be with Severn Trent would be quite critical to that. So I think that's really warming for myself and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jones. Our colleagues and members still happy for this to remain on the the agenda going forward in 2 months' time? I'll take that as a yes. Item 12, disclosure of exempt information. Is there anything tonight? No such information. I've only got one item of urgent business, and that is to say thank you very much to our officer on the left, Mr. Nick Bromley. After 16 years, is passing on to pastures new in terms of his career, and I just wish to thank him on behalf of the members and myself for his invaluable contributions over the year. So it's a case of one man on board and one man jumped. So it's good luck, Nick, in your new venture, and thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to our officers and to you councillors for being with us tonight. I'll formally draw the